Brandon, I would think while the wide receivers for Clemson cause major concerns and probably keep Urban Meyer up at night, it's really once we flip it to the other side of the ball and talk Ohio State offense against Clemson defense, the biggest concern I would think would be offensive line, Ohio State defensive front for the Clemson Tigers, because they have some monsters up there.
Definitely. That's kind of been the Buckeyes' weak spot at times. You look at games that they struggled, against Penn State and against Michigan, where, they were really good defensive lines. They were able to get pressure on JT Barrett quick. And I think in those games, he only had about 105 yards passing each game. So that kind of puts a lot of pressure on Mike Weber and Curtis Samuel and JT Barrett and the rush game, because JT Barrett's just not having much time when he drops back. And I don't think he's faced a defensive line as good as this. Michigan, you could argue, is pretty close. But, you look at Watkins and Lawrence and those guys, they are putting pressure every play. So this, and we talked about it a few weeks ago after it was first said that Clemson was facing the Buckeyes, is the offensive line for the Buckeyes over this next month has to grow and come together a lot better than they were playing early on. And specifically Isaiah Prince, who, had one of the worst rates in blocking ever. So I think Clemson's going to come out. They're going to, just kind of let the dogs loose with their defensive line. And I would expect them to kind of target Prince and see what they can do on putting pressure on Barrett. Because if they can take away that pass game, just like Michigan and Penn State, and then they can, load the box and just force Weber and Samuel and Barrett to kind of rush the ball 60 times and hope that they pull out a victory.
Yeah, Christian Wilkins, 12 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Dexter Lawrence, you mentioned him, 8.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks. Carlos Watkins, one of the better players in the conference, 9.5 tackles for loss and 8.5 sacks. Wilkins also blocked a big kick against NC State that proved decisive in that game. And those guys up front allow Ben Boulware, probably more than any other player on the field at linebacker, just to run around with his hair on fire and make tackles. And he's a menace with 9 tackles for loss, and a guy that is just a gamer. A guy that just loves football. You can just tell by watching him play. He's all over the place and just a tremendous player. Has just squeezed every bit of talent out of him. The secondary, very talented. That's just Clemson. Clemson has reached that status of recruiting where there's talent all over the place. But I think there are opportunities there with the secondary. There are opportunities. Pitt showed us that. Virginia Tech showed us that.
I think it's kind of like a broken record now, the Buckeyes need to get their passing game going. I think, just like you said, if the Buckeyes are going to have success where they can score a bunch of points, it's going to be because they're able to throw the ball on the secondary, just because I trust that a lot more than I trust the Buckeyes pounding the ball down Clemson's throat with the difference between their defensive line and the Buckeyes offensive line. So it's up to the wide receivers, as we've talked about quite a few times, that, somebody needs to step up. So I'm curious to see over the next month what all happens. You've got Noah Brown, who is going to be out there, who's flashed at times as a number one type of guy. Then at other times he's, been non-existent. So I'm curious to see if the coaching staff, what they do with guys like Dontre Wilson. Corey Smith will be completely healthy by the time that the bowl games come around for the first time all year. And Smith has been a big part of the offense the past couple of years. So, guys like Dontre Wilson, guys like Corey Smith, to see what the offensive staff has came up with for them over the next month and into December 31st. Because, they're going to need somebody to step up and, be that consistent threat for JT Barrett.
And Brandon, we know what the stats say when there's a special teams play and how that favors the team that executed the play and turned the game around. They usually win 70-80% of the time, just like a turnover battle. And of course, Tyler Durbin missed the 2 kicks against Michigan, but the Buckeyes escaped. And if you go back to the Penn State game, the blocked field goal, the blocked punt, proved obviously decisive. And this is a Clemson team that the return stats aren't going to wow you, even though they've got some of their heavy hitters back in the return game. But they did block some kicks when they were decisive. I mentioned Christian Wilkins against NC State. So it may be a play in the special teams that turns things around. But hopefully Tyler Durbin's got his head screwed on correctly for this game.
Yeah, it was, the Penn State game, we tried to forget about that one. We kind of gave Durbin a pass there because he was kind of rushed onto the field and forced to kick, a long field goal when there probably should have been a timeout called, and just let him get set. Wound up being blocked, and they returned it for touchdown, and we all know what happened there. So we try to forget about that. And then, but everyone was still, confident in Durbin. Came to the Michigan game, and he missed those 2 field goals. So I think confidence levels dropped a little bit. I mean, he went into that game, with no misses besides that one block. So he's a good field goal kicker. I think fans will be a little bit nervous if it's a tie ball game where Buckeyes are down by 1 or 2 with 5 seconds left. Just because you don't know if it's going to get to him, if the pressure is going to get to him like it did in the Michigan game, which we can only assume that it was just the pressure of it, because we know Durbin's good. We know he can kick 20, 30-yard field goals. He's been doing it all year. So, it's just the pressure of it. And I think that was a good experience for him. He was able to bounce back from that within the same game. It wasn't like he missed those 2 field goals and never kicked another one, and then we're going into this game with him not trying. So he was able to rebound against Michigan after missing those 2. So hopefully that kind of the playoffs okay. And then as far as punting goes, they've got Cam Johnston, who is what he is, finished second in the Ray Guy. He also had a rough game against Penn State. He had the blocked punt. That's where Johnston kind of gets into trouble sometimes, where it seems like he kind of sometimes takes an extra step that you don't see other punters do. Most of the time he's able to get it off because he can do the rugby style kick, and, he will blast it 70 yards. But there's a few times where he, takes that one extra step, and you just see that defense getting closer and closer. So, he needs to play his best game too, just like he did in the playoffs a few years ago. Clemson's got guys like Ray McLeod back there, who stats wise doesn't show like he's a great punt returner, but that guy is pretty. He's pretty dynamic back there. Where he's shown flashes that he can do some Peppers type of moves back there. So I just got to play smart with him, regardless of what the stats say.
Brandon Zimmerman joining us from the Buckeye Battle Cry each and every Wednesday night. So right here on Mark Rogers TV, Brandon bringing us insight unlike just about anywhere you can find on Buckeye football. And, of course, Ohio State taking it all the way to the Final Four in the college football playoff. And we did a pretty decent job here, but we'll give it one more go next week, Brandon, right before the game, and trying to size up these matchups. Hopefully there's no big news that comes out, because usually that's negative stuff, and we want to stay away from that when it comes to injuries and suspensions. So we'll lock in on more matchup talk this time next week.